Thank you for joining us. My name is Annie Mark, and I'm the Senior Director for Global Partnerships with Environmental Defense Fund. We're really happy to have you here today. We are celebrating our long-term international collaboration with Cuba and Cuban partners, and to recognize a recent scientific achievement, the 2023 circumnavigation expedition to assess the health of coastal coral reefs, known as Boheo Acua. In Cuba, Boheo is the term used for circumnavigating an island, making this expedition particularly unique. It marks the first comprehensive and standardized at-sea survey of fish species, the coral reef ecosystem, and the impacts of human activities in Cuban coastal waters. On behalf of EDF and the Wildlife Conservation Society, WCS, I would like to first recognize the principal Cuban institutions that led this expedition and many other outstanding conservation efforts on the island. The Ministry of Science, Technology, and the Environment, the Environmental Agency, Avalon Marinas Marlin, the Marine Research Center at the University of Havana, the Antonio Núñez Jiménez Foundation, and Naturaleza Secreta. Unfortunately, the lead researchers weren't able to join us today, but they did endorse the event, and we're happy to have their contributions acknowledged here. Thank you also to ICRI for hosting us at this pavilion. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the difficult circumstances that our partners have faced this week, dealing with the electrical system shutdown and the impacts of Hurricane Oscar. The town of Baracoa, where EDF and WCS are actively working, was particularly affected. And so we are working to provide assistance where possible, and we hope the broader international community will step up as well. Our vision at EDF is a vital Earth for everyone, and one of our most important goals is to stop climate change, especially by addressing the largest emitting nations. While countries like Cuba contribute far less to the problem, they face some of the greatest impacts. The Caribbean, including Cuba, is experiencing warming ocean temperatures and more frequent intense storms, putting coastal communities at increased risk. This is why our work here supports adaptation and resilience efforts, and why this collaboration is so important for our shared future. So, in that spirit of collaboration, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Amanda Leland, Executive Director for EDF, to kick off the event. Thank you.
Thanks, Annie. Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda.
Hi.
Hi. I like those smiles. Feel free to move forward if you want, but you don't have to.
Perfect position.
Okay, you are in the perfect position. Awesome. As Annie said, EDF's mission is a vital Earth for everyone, and to make this vision a reality, we have to have healthy coral reefs. So just to put this in perspective, I think about this personally. I'm a recovering scientist. I used to lead our fisheries and oceans work at EDF for many years. This stuff is deeply personal to me. I've been to some of these places in Cuba that we're going to be looking at today. Coral reefs are the lifeline of our planet. They host unparalleled biodiversity, and 25% of marine species rely on thriving coral reefs. Cuba is the most biodiverse country in the Caribbean. Who's had a chance to go to Cuba? Awesome. All right, well, it's in the future probably, yeah. The biodiversity of Cuba, intense storms, and they're putting coastal communities at risk. And these very resilient reefs in the Caribbean offer us all some hope for the future. So as Annie said, today we're going to look at this story of this incredible history of, I'm going to take through just some of the things that we're most proud of. So one of them is the design of the MPA network in Cuba. If you haven't heard about this, it's a great example of how it can work well. There's 25% protection of Cuban waters, and it's providing a model for other nations. And we also worked, interestingly, during the beginnings of the Obama administration to enable scientific collaboration between the US and Cuba, which actually is part of the story of how relationships became more productive over time. So scientific collaboration can lead to great and important things. Some of the fisheries-related work that we've done with the Cuban government over the last few years includes the first National Fisheries Assessment, the first National Plan of Action for Sharks and Rays, training a network of fishermen and fisherwomen and scientists to ensure that there are ways to make fishing more sustainable, developing science-based limits for a bunch of species in fisheries management, and then in 2019, Cuba passed a new fisheries law calling for the science-based management of all resources, and EDF has been a partner to the government in sort of problem solving and providing technical support in order to make that happen. And in the last few years, our partnership with WCS has focused on vulnerable communities and coastal resilience related to climate change impacts, and this includes the monitoring of coral reefs and mangroves and restoration of mangroves. So, just the expedition itself circled the Cuban archipelago. So it covered 2,000 nautical miles. It took 2 months of the scientists working together in 2023, and the purpose was to assess the health and the resilience of the island's coral reef ecosystems and marine life. And it was really, I don't know, it happened, whether that was good or bad, at the moment that it was the hottest time on record in Cuba. So they got this really incredible science assessment. Together we did this at a time when it was hot, hot, hot. So some of the key findings of this expedition: high density of corals and an average of 15% of coral cover throughout Cuban waters. So there's a lot of corals, there's good coral cover, but 60% of the corals were affected by bleaching while this expedition was happening. This year, scientists have gone back and they found that many of these areas have recovered from the bleaching. There is a huge biomass of large fishes and sharks that can still be found in the best protected areas of Cuba or protected places of Cuba. There's a high abundance of parrotfishes and medium fishes throughout most of the sampling that was done, and it appears to be higher than the vast majority of the wider Caribbean. That might not be a surprise, but being able to have the data to support that is good and helpful. And then there's the imagery that the Boheo expedition conjures, which is pretty amazing. It was widely shared on Cuban television through over 40 programs, thanks to the really amazing work of Natalisa Sequeta. And so you have the benefit, we all have the benefit of watching some of what they found on this expedition. What we love about this is it really can provide a model for the region. There's around international scientific collaboration, around communications with partnerships, around training scientists so they can understand what they're seeing and really bringing that into their own research. And starting to understand better the story between conservation and climate adaptation in these really important reefs. So, with that, I think we're going to key up the video. It's about 6 minutes long, and we're grateful that you're here with us. Thank you.
Let's hope this works. Do I need to do anything?
Yeah, press it again.
Wait a second.
No, press it again.
Oh, press it again. Pressing. Oh! I pressed it one too many times. Nope. This is why I'm not in IT. Thank you. Can you hear it? It'll come up. Yeah.
Welcome to a world beneath the waves, full of color, mystery, and breathtaking beauty. In the heart of our oceans lies a magical realm, vibrant and teeming with life, the enchanting world of coral reefs. These underwater ecosystems are the backbone of coastal economies, supporting livelihoods that sustain communities around the globe. In fact, 500 million people depend on healthy coral reefs. They can absorb up to 97% of wave energy, protecting us from storms. They are lifelines for our planet, hosting unparalleled biodiversity, with approximately 25% of all marine species relying on thriving coral reefs. Yet, our coral reefs face unprecedented challenges. Unsustainable fishing practices disrupt the delicate balance of these ecosystems, leaving reefs vulnerable and struggling for survival. And rising ocean temperatures fueled by climate change are pushing coral reefs to their limits. As our oceans absorb excess carbon dioxide, they become more acidic. This acidity weakens coral skeletons, like the slow erosion of a once majestic castle. We're in the midst of a perfect storm. Climate change, ocean acidification, and unsustainable human activities are some of the main challenges that threaten our reefs. With the purpose of expanding our understanding of these ecosystems in this ongoing storm, an interdisciplinary team of Cuban experts embarked on a historic marine expedition circling the Cuban archipelago by ship. The project is known and called by oceanographers a dream come true for Cuba's marine science and for the world. This is because Cuban waters are home to 4 of the world's most climate-resilient reefs. They provide ideal conditions to explore ways to protect and restore coral that can offer hope worldwide. The expedition covered almost 2,000 nautical miles of coastline in 2 months to assess the health and resilience of the island's coral reef ecosystems and marine life in the face of warming ocean waters. By the end of the journey, scientists discovered that their research took place during the hottest months on record. Collaboration is at the core of Eloheo's success, with over 30 Cuban extensive coral bleaching through captivating images and videos. This is a powerful tool for raising public awareness and engaging Cuban and international communities in marine conservation. The expedition sheds light on the challenges faced by Cuba's coral reefs, which make up 13% of the greater Caribbean reefs. Eloheo emphasizes the urgency of climate change action, highlighting the vulnerability of Cuba's coastal ecosystems to the impacts of human activities. But there are also signs of hope. Eloheo opened the window into Cuba's rich underwater world, revealing places with healthy corals and high levels of biodiversity. The voyage may be over, but the work of Eloheo Cuba has just started. This historic project sets up continued monitoring and long-term research, providing valuable data on changes to the marine environment. This is essential for identifying trends, evaluating the success of conservation initiatives and climate adaptation plans, and adjusting strategies as needed. The information from Eloheo Cuba will contribute to the development of evidence-based policies and regulations that support resilient coral reefs, fisheries, and coastal livelihoods. The Boheo team is already engaging communities across the country and uniting Cubans around the wonder and fragility of the underwater world, along with fostering connections and support for conservation efforts and encouraging actions to protect the reefs. Marine ecosystems often span international borders, and collaborative research efforts facilitate the process of addressing shared challenges. One of these efforts is the ambitious 30 by 30 initiative, through which numerous nations, including Cuba, have pledged their dedication to safeguard 30% of the Earth's oceans by the year 2030. Eloheo Cuba expedition offers crucial insights to guide research, policy, and conservation efforts, not only for Cuba, but for marine ecosystems globally. As we celebrate the success of Eloheo, let us remember that the protection of our oceans is a shared responsibility. Together, we are working across borders to turn science into action for resilient ecosystems and communities.
Thank you. Next, I have the pleasure of introducing Pamela Castillo. Probably many of you know her already. Pamela is the WCS Director of Marine 30 by 30. She has spent her career dedicated to environmental conservation. She's held several positions in the field, including serving as Vice Minister of Environment for the Government of Costa Rica, Executive Director of the Tropical Scientific Center of Costa Rica, and Program Manager of Forever Costa Rica Conservation Trust Fund. In these roles, she's led the expansion and effective management strategies of marine and terrestrial protected areas in her country and at a regional scale, working with multi-government platforms such as the Eastern Tropical Pacific and public and private donors. She was key in building support for the High Ambition Coalition, which set the 30 by 30 goal. Pamela also advocates for gender equity and sustainable finance mechanisms and has designed national and regional conservation programs and investments for bilateral and multilateral institutions like KfW and the Inter-American Development Bank. Pamela, we're so glad you're here. Thank you.
Muy buenas tardes, good afternoon. For us at WCS, it's an honor to be part of this side event and celebrate our partnership with EDF and the CDC that will be after my presentation. So, and for me personally, it's an honor to be here as an ambassador of our local partners and our awesome country program director, Natalia Rossi, sharing what they have built through this partnership and moving forward 30 by 30 and conserving the natural capital of Cuba. So WCS since 1999, we have worked hand in hand with our Cuban partners to support the conservation of the island's remarkable biodiversity and ecosystems. As you have just seen, El Bojeo is a powerful example of how collaboration can drive us toward ambitious conservation goals. Cuba stands as a true symbol of resilience, with its many hope sites offering inspiration and serving as anchors for conservation efforts worldwide. It is a reminder that through partnerships and shared vision, we continue to safeguard our planet's most vital places and the livelihoods they support. An overwhelming majority of countries around the world, including Cuba, have committed to protecting 30% of our planet's land and seas by 2030. At WCS, we strongly believe that for these targets to be truly meaningful, efforts must be focused on areas that contribute most significantly to climate, biodiversity, and health, places with high ecological integrity. Our collaborative work in Cuba highlights this critical connection between maintaining high climatic charts and others depend entirely on the connectivity between islands in the insular Caribbean and the continent. We can achieve a greater impact toward the 30 by 30 goal if these efforts are coordinated, recognize that above all, we share an interconnected sea. The rapid expansion of marine protected areas that 30 by 30 is calling us presents an immense challenge. How to move quickly while ensuring that we carry meaningful and lasting impact. Addressing this requires supporting local partners on the ground while scaling up the most effective conservation models to regional and global levels, offering a pathway to overcome this challenge. We cannot focus only on expansion. The most and more critical is to guarantee effective management and equitable and inclusive governance if we want 30 by 30 to be truly successful and enduring. In collaboration with and in service to local communities, we aim to elevate conservation efforts like El Bojeo into policy and projects that promote functional ecosystem and thriving communities, contributing to collectively success of 30 by 30 and a healthier planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Next, we have Jose Gerhardt, a Cuban geographer and marine conservation specialist who now helps lead the work of the Secretariat of the Biological Corridor in the Caribbean. EDF and WCS are honored to count Pepe as a longtime collaborator and friend in Cuba and in the region.
Distinguished panelists and guests, dear colleagues, I am honored to join you today to discuss the preliminary accounts of El Bojeo, Cuba, and the vital role that Cuba's coral reefs and connected ecosystems play in maintaining regional ecological health. Cuba holds a unique ecological position in the Caribbean. Its extensive coral reefs are not isolated systems. They function as critical nodes in a web of ecological connectivity that spans the northern and western Caribbean and even reaches the shores of Florida. This connectivity is essential for maintaining biodiversity, ensuring food security, and supporting livelihoods that depend on marine resources. Several key factors highlight the crucial role in sustaining ecological connectivity across the region. Cuba boasts an outstanding number of reef fish spawning aggregation sites, ranking third globally in the historical number of reported sites. These spawning sites provide a lifeline to fisheries across the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. Ocean currents transport larvae from the aggregation across regional boundaries, helping replenish fish stocks that are vital to coastal economies, including Florida's recreational and commercial fisheries. Without these healthy reefs, marine ecosystem through the Caribbean would struggle to sustain fish populations, impacting biodiversity and the livelihoods of millions. Moreover, Cuba hosts the largest swath of intact mangrove in the Caribbean islands, ranking 10th globally. These mangrove work hand in hand with coral reefs and adjacent seagrass prairies to form a triad of interconnected ecosystems. Together, they stabilize coastlines, reduce storm impacts, sequester carbon, and serve as nurseries for countless marine species. The role of these ecosystems extends far beyond Cuba's shore, supporting vital ecological processes and services across the borders. But as El Bojeo expedition documented, these ecosystems are under increasing stress. Rising sea temperatures and human activities such as overfishing pose significant challenges. Yet the resilience observed in Cuba, especially in areas where protection measures are effective, provides hope. However, isolated conservation efforts will not be enough to halt the decline of marine biodiversity and ecosystem services throughout the Caribbean. Our species' habitats and ecological processes do not recognize political boundaries. Moreover, given limited resources and shared threats, regional cooperation is essential to harmonize policy and coordinate actions among countries. This is where initiatives of regional cooperation like the Caribbean Biological Corridor, or CBC, play a fundamental role. By facilitating cross-border research, the creation of connected marine protected areas, and promoting exchange, cooperation, and coordination, the CBC tried to ensure that efforts to conserve ecosystems in one country are complemented by the actions in neighboring countries. A network of well-managed and interconnected marine areas stretching from Cuba to the Caribbean and beyond maximize the resilience of ecosystems in the face of climate change and other threats. The outcomes of El Bojeo expedition strengthened our understanding of these transboundary ecosystems and provide scientific data to guide these collaborative efforts. The mission ahead is to continue building and refining conservation networks that span national ecosystems, and protecting this interconnected system is not only an ecological imperative, but also a socioeconomic one, ensuring the long-term provision of ecosystem services like fisheries, tourism, and coastal protection. The conservation of Cuba's coral reefs, mangroves, and seagrass transcend national responsibility. It is a regional imperative. Working together across borders and fostering regional cooperation initiatives, we can protect these places of hope and ensure they continue to serve as the lifeblood of the Caribbean and beyond. The knowledge gained from scientific expeditions like El Bojeo equip us with the tools to do so. But it's now up to us, scientists, policymakers, conservation practitioners, and citizens, not only to deepen our understanding of the ocean hidden treasures, but to turn this knowledge into action. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Well, thank you. We are at the end of our presentations. We are going to advance to a panel discussion. I note and thank all of the participants, hybrid online. Valerie Miller from EDF is our lead in Cuba, and it's just a real honor and privilege to be here. And you have heard that Pamela and I are the representatives, and many of you have probably been collaborating as well. So Pamela, I'd like to invite you back up for our panel discussion. And I'll start us off, and then I'd like to pass it back to you and the audience. So Pamela, our day started actually this morning at a breakfast together, another panel you were on, and one of the themes and hashtags was ocean optimism. And I know that you bring partnerships at scale in large seascapes, including in the Caribbean, and I'm wondering where you're finding optimism in this place of challenge.
Thank you, Annie. Let's say that this is a conversation between friends and not a panel discussion. Yes, I think that in the case that have us today here in the Caribbean Biological Corridor, and the countries and governments that are represented in this intergovernmental platform gives hope as the reefs that we just seen. Because 30 by 30 is a huge challenge for governments, and we know that. But not only for governments, because this is a joint responsibility between multiple sectors. No government will be able to do it alone, and us as an organization is either, and local communities either. So we need to bridge the gaps, the disconnection of collaborative work. So this type of coalitions make possible transformational change. And this is the case that has inspired me so much since I joined WCS and learning all the initiatives, seeing the synergy and the genuine joint work of organizations and local communities in Cuba for moving forward marine conservation, because local communities are the frontliners that knows and depends of the health of our oceans. So seeing through this MOU that we signed with the Caribbean Biological Corridor, through the partnership with the EDF, we have been getting closer to more communities out of Cuba and helping providing science to the efforts that the CDC is leading. So for those that doesn't know about the Caribbean Biological Corridor, is the environmental ministers come together and define and find the strategy, terrestrial and marine, and where are the gaps and necessities to be filled out. And so through this collaboration, we have advanced two main building blocks to success for me. One is the creation of an ocean forum. So through this ocean forum, the CDC is bringing together all the civil society that is working on the different islands in marine conservation to share what are their efforts to coordinate, to avoid double work, double investment. Resources are not enough, so we should use them in the more effectively way, not competing for them, but more working on a coalition of social society and academia and authorities as well. So that's one. The CDC is bringing all social society together to put all the science available, but as well the efforts on the ground, and discussing what are the gaps that local communities are finding, what are the enabling conditions that we need to work on policy, on governance, and in the ground. And the second advance that when you work really truly together, everything accelerates. So we are so proud to be a driving force in the sense of bringing science that is being identified as gaps. So recently we just did a quick risk assessment of the seascape of this marine interconnection, and one of the main results of this was identifying the open sources that could be available in the seascape for doing controls and surveillance of these areas, that not only we are missing science, but actually that the countries are blind to what is happening in that waters. And having this information have moved the ambition and the hope of governments and local communities that they can move this building through collaborative approach, building solutions, working together to fill the gaps, and moving forward where we are looking at the third main component is support or facilitate multi-stakeholder planning of 30 by 30. So like each country needs to do their own NBSAPs and expansion plans, but marine is interconnected. So we cannot achieve 30 by 30 if we don't have a marine spatial planning at the regional level. And so to make sure that the efforts that come
by diversity fund. So yes, if we speak specifically to the case of Cuba, we currently hold an endowment fund for Cuba. The challenge that we're faced with Cuba, and it's very unique to the situation of Cuba, is making sure that we can get the funds into Cuba. So yeah, I see people smiling, and I think you are aware of the challenges of getting US dollars into Cuba, as physically into a bank account in Cuba where it can be accessible to communities and conservation efforts. So we are currently working with the UNDP Cuba to see if we can sign at least some temporarily agreement with them to at least start the flow of funds to Cuba, because so far we haven't been able actually to secure that flow of funds to Cuba because of the challenges of getting funding into Cuba. So that would be the first phase. And then yes, you mentioned 6 years ago, we took the Ministry of Environment after that to Dominica to talk about the conservation trust funds and how we can get it started. We took them to Red Lake last month, the network of conservation trust funds in Latin America and the Caribbean, the annual conference in St. Lucia, so they spoke again. a public conservation trust fund is not new in the region, it exists. We just advocate for, the majority non-government. And I think that is where we also are trying to push for Cuba to have that governance structure in place. So, but we're supporting them with that capacity building. Meanwhile, we're trying to see what would be I would say, the less risky way for now for everybody to get the funds into Cuba. And it seems that we can use that small grants program from the CEVP that is actually now being administered in Cuba by UNDP. So really getting the funding on the ground. But yes, the next steps would be after that, is Cuba ready indeed to establish their own National Conservation Trust Fund? And if they're not ready, what would be some other ways of avenues to making sure that we do get the funding inside Cuba? But yeah, that's where we are.
Thank you, Tanya. And just to add and to answer your question, I think that's the richness of intergovernmental platforms. And as I said in my speech, is Cuba doesn't need to do it alone. So that's the Caribbean Biological Corridor value added, that they can mobilize resources that doesn't compete with national funding flows. So it could be additional, and by joining this type of coalitions, you actually increase the capacity of bringing more money, but at the same time building more or accelerate the innovation of how to tackle necessities. And in Latin America and in the Caribbean, the innovation comes from necessities and resilience. So I think that bringing the Ocean Forum and the governments together, and through science, but as well other type of supportive discussion like this regional planning, will help governments to find solutions together and then replicate them at the national level. So there is a value of this coalition is to bring other fundings that are additional to what governments can bring into the national accounts.
Maybe on the corridor, Pami, is that for us we have spoken with the corridor, but they are not their own entity as yet. So we hope that maybe in future, because we did speak to them and I think they're doing great work. But right now they're being housed, I think, by UNEP. So they're in Dominican Republic in the UNEP office. And it would be great to see if they can transition, if at all possible, right, to their own legal entity so they can actually receive funds themselves. Because right now, for any donor, such as us, if we want to work with a corridor, it would have to be through a UNEP, I think, bank account, which is sometimes, creates its own challenges. So hopefully, right, so those kind of steps to bring that corridor into something that has their own legal entity and mechanism, can handle their own funding, that would be great.
For backing that, I invite you to the next side event that we have on the 31 in this same place with the CBF and the CDC, that they will be here, and the ETBS and the Pacífico Foundation. So that's the power of partnerships, as I mentioned. We will not get 30 by 30 done if we don't begin to this type of coalitions. And just to answer to Tanya, the progress that the CDC have done is that they agreed to create MOUs with other entities to implement actions. And one of them is WCS, and we are super honored that they trust us to be one of the partners that will help them to implement actions while they try to build their own structure. The Eastern Tropical Pacific hasn't get there, and both of them kind of have the same age, 20 years of existence. But now they are managing $16 million from GAF. So there are innovative ways of doing it by coalitions and by partnerships and looking for solutions. But more on this on the 31 of October, same place but 9 a.m.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been a joy to plan this with you and our colleagues and to see this partnership moving forward. We know when we'll be back and see you again next. And thank you all for participating. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim. It's always good to see you. Oh, sorry. It's Fabian from CES. I don't know if you've seen it. Find a joint.
That first one.
Does that have both of us?
Salí el otro, me salí el otro para venir aquí a
Nice to see you. How are you? Good.
Remember me? No, from
Eventos, of course.
from Guatemala. I'm just not visiting now.
And I was like, but it says Guatemala, but I recognize you. What's going on?
For me to be national, I guess. Students say, yeah, come on.
Perfect. Nice to see you.
You like it?
I like it.
Years now, no?
Almost 3 years. But I just started a new role, actually. So Gerald took me over, and when we left, I said, I'll do something different. So, you enjoyed Gerald?
But it's fine, I mean, I like it.
We just want to do a quick photo, and then I give you time. I was going to ask you if we can do that.
Pamela, voy a estar en la oficina, tengo que tomar una llamada. Pero vamos para abajo.
Do you want with and one without?
Yes. Want to go first? Sure. I'm going to stay with you. Where are you going? Thank you.
Sorry, this is
I mean, I can send them to me. I'd like to have both just to see what it's like. Yeah, Android. You have WhatsApp?
Hi, honey. I want to read this lesson. I'm gonna read
What's my WhatsApp number?
Thank you for this one. We didn't have a phone, but we had yeah. But they were good. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure that you came.
I just want the photo without it.
Yeah, I have your email. If anything else comes up, just say,
Oh, that's my WhatsApp.
yeah,
Because
I'll take it from
how's your week going?
it's interesting. I feel kind of overwhelmed.
Yeah.
You have literally you have a lot of subjects.
Yeah.
A lot of applicants. Yeah. I'm trying to live.
Yeah.
No, I'm really good. I guess
I have send me the WhatsApp and then we can sit and have a coffee.
Thank you.
Hello, can I studio? I can say one more.
Thank you so much.
I can think of it.
Oh, she's getting the hair down, so we're going to get the better for her.
Is this okay?
Yes, it's perfect.
Awesome, thank you so much. You got your now? Yes, I've seen it. Leave it on there if you don't have it.
All right. Excellent, thank you.
And the rest of the meetings. So let's actually have, or maybe we can have well, now I slow down and then that's 30 and 31. About time. So then you're
Oh, it's the official program?
The official program, it's in the
We're very ocean coffee shop. So we just do more like yeah, I love the English. Great.
I mean, I'm supposed to do that today. I'm next to it. I'm thinking or Argentina. So 3 flights to get there. Argentina.
Trabajas con Gaby. Sí.
That looks like a nice session, right?
Interesante porque nosotros organizamos una reunión después para que hablemos de yo te mando, yo te mando un WhatsApp para que organicemos que todo el mundo está corriendo
el día de eventos era este día, después hasta el 30 y 31, se te va a despertar. O sea, este día de aquí hasta el 30 tengo más principio.
Yo lo único es que yo me pongo mañana porque tengo que hacer enfermedades coralinas.
Pues hay unas partes de 15 días por aquí, nos podemos ver tal vez en primero.
Dale, yo te escribo, entonces ahorita ya te escribo. Yo voy a estar aquí en San Luis de los Padres para hablar del blanqueamiento y como de nuevas cosas que han encontrado para esto. Yo te escribo y te voy a
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Everyone's trying to get into it. I kind of think it's a, but you know, maybe I like it.
Ah, sorry. You're
Y además lleva eso al bosque, lleva eso al manglar. Y es que aprovecha San Andrés nuestra, yo creo que desde tanto golpe, de tanta bueno, la diferencia es que San Andrés es más plana.
asking them the question.
¿Qué va a pasar? Sí, sí,
When I and I'm not here, so it's not